seems low. Tracked in at 5.5% this past February. The Feds consider that to be full employment. But is it really? I'm Elise Glink. Here's my Glinkonomics report for the Real Estate Minute. I want you to take a look around the country. Your friends, colleagues, and family members, all of them should be gainfully employed by now, right? If we're at full employment. There should be employers trying to poach them for their jobs. They should be getting raises and bonuses. The unemployment rate here in the United States is sitting at 5.5%, which should indicate a very healthy labor market. But the Federal Reserve Bank may not actually see it that way, and at the end of their two-day Open Markets Committee meeting this week, they're going to signal whether they'll raise interest rates and how soon. You've noticed that the stock market been a little crazy lately? That's why. It could be as early as June that rates start rising. So all's well, right? Not so fast. If you look, wages really aren't growing, and that's a reflection, in my mind, of a relatively weak demand for labor. A historically small share of Americans are actually working or looking for jobs. That's the labor participation rate, and right now it's sitting at 62%. It's virtually the lowest it's been since the 1970s. That was 50 years ago. We have a lot more people in this country now. 62% is low. At the beginning of the recession in 2007, that number was 66%, and I'll talk about that more in a moment. There's something called the U6, which for many of you who've listened to me for years, you know that I think is the more accurate reflection of what's going on in the employment markets, and it is the broadest measure of unemployment from the Labor Department. And that's because it includes folks who've given up looking for work, and those who are stuck in part-time jobs, and those who went back to school and gave up looking for a job, and those who threw up their hands and said, you know what, I'm going to stay and be an at-home parent. That number, that U6 number, is at 11%. And that's 5.5% higher than the official unemployment rate. And again, before the recession began, the differential was a lot less. It was only 3.6%. To me, this does not feel like an economy at full employment. In fact, if you go back to the labor participation rate of 66% in 2007, the true state of unemployment would be more like 15%. And if you're minority, it's a lot higher than that. So what about those jobs that everybody has right now? Well, if I go by what I'm hearing, many folks are working several part-time jobs without benefits, or they've taken full-time jobs at lower salaries. Their finances are still totally devastated. And a lot of those people have actually used all of their IRA money or 401k money in order to meet current financial need. Nearly 6 million homeowners are still deeply underwater with their mortgages. Okay, so that's better than the 10 million at the height of the recession, but still not great. And a lot of those people went into foreclosure and aren't homeowners anymore. This hardly sounds like the picture of a booming economy. I was chatting recently with Frank Nothaff, who for 28 years was the chief economist at Freddie Mac and who is now the chief economist at CoreLogic. And he agreed that 8 years after a typical recession, you'd see an employment picture that looks a whole lot different from this one. You'd see stronger growth. You'd see more people employed overall, and you'd see a lot higher wages. Not the 2% growth we've seen in average hourly earning increase over the past year. Hey, by the way, much of that was due to the rising minimum wage. How many more jobs do we actually need to get back to full employment, real full employment? Well, some economists think that number is about 3 million more. 3 million more on top of what's already being created. And that, any way you count it, is a lot of jobs. So what's going on overseas right now could also hurt the U.S. economy. Europe is nearly in a recession. Some countries are officially in a recession or never came out of the last one. Spain, by the way, still has unemployment rates of 25% in parts of the country in the south. China and Latin America are slowing. Brazil is in trouble. And the U.S. might, if we are super lucky, post a 3% growth rate for the whole year this year. Since our last downturn in 2000, some 15 years ago, I can't remember a year where we posted a full year of growth above 3%. Now, there have been some strong quarters here and there, but continuous, sustained growth, the kind that builds real jobs, no. So here we are, nearly 8 years after the Great Recession began, and you could imagine that at this point in the economic cycle, we'd be getting ready for another recession, every 8-9 years or so. Or at least a contraction in the stock markets, which still seem to me to be completely disconnected from reality. It's all interesting, and it's worrying. And if you're looking for a job right now, it's downright terrifying. There are a whole lot of folks wondering when the housing market's going to regain full strength, when builders will start building more single-family homes, right? In fact, the numbers that just came out this week show that single-family starts are down something like 17% from a year ago. And yes, we've had a really rough winter, but hello, last winter was no picnic. Why is this happening? For my money, it still all comes down to jobs, because if you don't have one that's stable enough and pays you enough to support a mortgage, taxes, and insurance, you're not going to feel financially secure enough to buy a home. And that's the bottom line. Thanks for watching today's Glinkonomics report. Be sure to share this video and leave your comments and questions here or at thinklink.com. Until next time, I'm Elise Glink.